Wallabies season review for 2020. Like the All Blacks, it's a pretty short season, just the 6 games. And when I'm looking at bad, I'm looking at that record and saying one win from 6 is not the greatest effort, but bro, they only had 2 losses. So if you're looking at how many games did they lose, it's the minority. But if you look in the games that they won, it's even less. So, yeah, I'll go through some of the individuals, some of the team stats, where they're looking good, where they're not looking that great, and how they might be situated for 2021. What's fun about this is I've already done this for the All Blacks and the English. The more I do of these, the more I'm able to compare their overall numbers just to see where each team is at, which is actually quite interesting. One thing that's interesting when you look at the Wallaby stats, it's that they quite like the pill. They have more possession and territory than both England and the All Blacks, like 56.5 and 59.2 for possession and territory respectively, whereas the All Blacks just creak over 50 in both, and England have slightly under 50 and just slightly over 50 for possession and territory again. But the Wallabies are like, closing in on mid 50s and 60 compared to the other guys, and yet their record is a wee bit worse, which may also speak to the current state of the game where kick-in is important. And funnily enough, the Wallabies kick the least of the 3 teams. They did actually pick up the kicking against Argentina because they played these 6 games. The last 2 of them were against Argentina. First game they kicked 21 times, then 11, then 15, then 17, all below 20, which is quite low. Like, especially when you're considering England's average was 36.2 kicks per game. The All Blacks were at 21.8, so 17, 15, 11, all very low, 21 kind of there or thereabouts. But then Argentina kick a lot in that Tri Nations tournament anyway, and it seems like the Wallabies kind of met kicking with kicking, so they upped it from the biggest being 21 to that first draw against the Pumas, 32 kicks, and then 27. So that brings their overall average up to like just over 20, but they still kick the least of the 3 teams. Interestingly, they also don't get great yardage per carry. Like, the overall number of run meters is okay. They average 429 run meters per game, which is more than England, less than the All Blacks. England's at 300. Remember, they kick a lot. And the All Blacks are at 455. So, in the same ballpark as the All Blacks. But their meters per carry, like the All Blacks is it's around 4, whereas the the Wallabies is like 3.5. That doesn't sound like a huge difference, but I think 4 is that magic number where if you can keep teams to below 4, you're generally doing pretty well. And the Wallabies only managed to get over 4 meters a game once, and that was, funnily enough, in that big loss to the All Blacks. Every other game, they were in the 3s, and that last game against Argentina, the 16-all draw, they were just so stifled by the Argentinian defense. They were averaging 2.2 meters a carry, which is really not pretty. They also offload the ball a ton. Maybe that's Dave Rennie's influence. They offload more than the All Blacks and a whole lot more than England. 8 average offloads a game, 7.5 for the All Blacks. So it's only a marginal difference, and then England's only 3.6. So, Dave Rennie's team, based on those numbers, seems to want to play a bit of a possession game, not so much kicking, kind of reminiscent of Michael Cheika, but that may be a curse word for some people in Australia. They're able to rack up the run meters, but with maybe pure number of carries with all the ball they're having, rather than necessarily like definitive like cutting into the offensive or the defensive lines, of the opposition. So, interesting reading. I'm sure that's one thing they will work on, but I'll get to some of the personnel in a bit. The handling is like okay, similar knock-on ratio to the All Blacks, but interestingly, when they knocked on in their games against the All Blacks, when they knocked on less than the All Blacks, funnily enough, they got better results. The first game in Wellington, the draw, they knocked on 6 times. The All Blacks knocked on 14. So the All Blacks were error-ridden in that game, and it showed with the draw. The 43-5 loss to the All Blacks, they knocked on 11 times the All Blacks, just the 7. And the time when they beat the All Blacks, 24-22, Wallabies only knocked on 3 times. So it's not rocket science, man. If you can keep hold of your own ball without making errors, then you're more likely to get favourable results. Defenders beaten, again, they're slightly more than England, 19 per game. England's like 13. The All Blacks are almost up at 25, so kind of middle ground. Clean breaks. And now this is one that I find a little bit disconcerting for the Wallabies because they've still got more than England, 7.2 clean breaks a game. England's at 5.8, but remember, England play with less ball. So in theory, they should be creating less clean breaks, but the difference is not that much. The All Blacks are up to like 11. So the Wallabies with 7.2 is okay, but it actually got kind of worse throughout the season. Like the first couple of games against the All Blacks, they got into double figures, 10 and 13. Then the next two games against the All Blacks, they were limited to 8. First game against Argentina, they were limited to 4 clean breaks. And then that final game, the 16-all draw against the Pumas, not a single clean break in the entire game. So yeah, a little bit disconcerting. Likewise, their defense is the worst of the three countries I've looked at so far. Average tackle rates like 82%. The English are at 87 and the All Blacks are at 88. Now, you could argue there's lots of reasons for that. England's been playing Georgia and been playing Italy, so maybe that gives them a better chance to attack well, although I think England's tackling percentage against Italy was actually really poor, like 75. But playing the All Blacks 4 times, it's probably not going to do your defensive stats that good a favour, but I'm just saying, man, it's an area to work on. Also, the line-out wasn't that flash. They did manage to get better numbers than the Pumas, but they were only able to get the same number as the All Blacks, and like in the draw, they were operating at 76%. Remember, the Wallabies could have won that game. Imagine if they'd had a line-out that was operating better than at 76%. So overall, their line-out operates at like 87%. The All Blacks are at 92%, and England's at like 96%. So a cut below, clearly. And that's, again, stuff you can control. Goal kicking also, it's made worse by that 43-5 game where they only had one shot and they missed it. So it's a 0%. So it drops them down to 61% in terms of the goal kicking, which is not great. If you take out the 0, it's in the 70s, which again is still okay. Reece Hodge's long shots, maybe he's missed a few. It's kind of hard to read too much into it, but certainly the Wallaby season looks better if Reece Hodge gets a couple of those kicks. You're looking at maybe, I don't know, 2 more wins at least. The last one I'll kind of harp on about. I don't mean to be real negative on the Wallabies because I still think there's some positives, and I'll get to those as well. But the number of tries they've scored is also pretty bad. And I take into account the fact that they're playing the All Blacks. Their recent record before Dave Rennie is not great against the All Blacks. 1.2 is the average number of tries scored a game, and they only managed to get 1 try against Argentina, which is a bit worrying. Like the All Blacks scored 3.7 tries and the English 2.8 in their games. Wallabies are at 1.2. And then on the flip side, tries conceded, 2.7 by the Wallabies, 1.2 and 1.3 for New Zealand and England, respectively. So, yeah. I mean, the fact that they weren't able to crack the Argentinians is a bit worrying. I know the Argentinians had they beat the All Blacks for the first time, for goodness sake. So I know they were a different beast from maybe what we're used to seeing, but still, it is a little bit worrying. That being said, there's still heaps of potential here. Remember, Dave Rennie's just taken over the team for his first year, and boy, did he introduce a lot of young guys. A heap of young guys. So we take that into account for sure. He's certainly set a platform to build on. If they're going to keep playing with the amount of possession and territory they're able to have, maybe that's a good base. Once the attack gets a little bit slicker, they'll start getting those clean breaks. The defensive patterns get a bit more, a bit more routine about them. Those numbers will bump up. You don't play, the majority of your games against the All Blacks, like 4 out of 6 games. That will probably help numbers generally across the board. Goal kicking as an individual one that can be improved. Likewise, the line out. I expect all these things to improve. Absolutely. So I still think there's some good kind of fundamentals there. You look at Reece Hodge, he was the 3rd best point scorer in the Tri-Nations. People can still argue he missed those clutch kicks, but He proved to be a pretty important player. He's pretty versatile. 40 points. Remember, the top point scorer was Sanchez, was 43. I think Mwanga had like 42 or 41. So Hodge was there or thereabouts. Korobidi had the most run meters, but kind of comes with some drawbacks in like his turnovers conceded and his tackling weren't the flashiest. Paisami also had the most carries. He was very busy, had a bunch of attacking stats as well. But again, with that caveat of some of his other stats, turnovers conceded, tackling, was not the best, but he's a young man. He'll get better. Harry Wilson also had a ton of carries. He looks like a good prospect for the Wallabies. He'll only get better as he gets more experience. Taniela Tupou looks potentially like he could be like the world's best tight head at some point, man, because he offers a pretty good scrummaging game. Like sometimes he just absolutely destroys opposition loose heads. Sometimes he gets pinged. Depends on how the ref's going. But in terms of the around the park stuff, which is a bonus for a prop because you're there for your scrummaging, he's got a real deep bag of tricks. He's got like beats defenders. He can get clean breaks. He's got good passing skills. Like he's almost a complete package. And his discipline got better in this 2020 season for the Wallabies. That's always been like his Achilles heel. So concerning for the rest of the world. Hooper's still a tackling machine. It's a bugger. They kind of had a couple of red cards and, you know, a couple of, like I said, missed kicks towards the end. Could have been looking at a different story, but overall, the record maybe doesn't do them justice. They lost twice to the All Blacks. One was like a record defeat, and then they bounced back with a win. You'd be pretty pleased with that. You could argue that this All Blacks team is the weakest in a while. Some people are arguing that, and that the Wallabies at home, essentially for the Tri-Nations, should have done a lot better than last. That's a fair call. They had a big old opportunity when the All Blacks lost to Argentina to really kick on and make a stake for the competition itself, but they couldn't actually beat Argentina. So, yeah. But anyway, I am optimistic for 2021. I can see the good stuff in there, at least in the numbers and in the amount of guys that have been blooded. There's still a lot to work on, don't get me wrong. Like I think it's very much work in progress, but that's the deal. Dave Rennie, first year in the job, that's what he signed up for. He's not signed up to win competitions in 2020. Obviously, give it your best crack, but he's signed up to do a good job through till the World Cup. So, yeah, I'm patient enough to wait and see how that goes. But, yeah, you guys let me know what you reckon about the Wallabies 2020 season. Do you, like me, kind of have your optimistic hat on where you can see the positives and think these guys can kick on to 2021? Or are you looking at that, like guys like Brendan Pangamosa signing for overseas and thinking the Wallabies may be in a bit of strife? But anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts on this one. If any of you guys have ever thought about supporting the channel, I'm going to sell the old Patreon to you guys. Link in the description. There's more content there. Even if you just want to chuck $1 a month, it'll be most welcome. But yeah, I know financial times are tough, so don't feel obliged. But if you do want to support the channel, it will be much appreciated. But yeah, as I said, you guys let me know your thoughts on the Wallabies season. I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.